football field area. So you might want to go back and check again, because I know I was there when they put it in. So please check in the back side of the football field.
Yeah.
Okay.
I walked out there and looked at it. We'll be glad to check the records again as well, but there just didn't seem to be any indication in what I reviewed. But I'll be glad to go back and make a second look.
I appreciate it. The other thing is golf course. Say, for example, residential has a golf course to it and a detention pond. Are we going to maintain that golf course detention pond, or is just behind just certain houses?
If the pond was installed specifically to meet a requirement of the community for the residential development, then that would be something that we would look at. I'm not aware of any ponds on golf courses that were installed in response to city water quality guidelines and requirements. There are many ponds, that hold water on golf courses, but most of those are aesthetic only in nature, or they're considered water features of the golf course. Those would not be part of this program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Gilbert. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. Bill, this is a great program. I was excited when I first heard about it. I know a lot of people don't know sometimes who owns the retention ponds. People may buy them in a large back tax sale, which we've had in District 4. Neighbors' HOAs are no longer in effect, and residents are very concerned about health and safety issues. So I think it's a great program. Thanks for doing it.
Our pleasure.
One of the questions I had was, when you're ranking how are you ranking them? Are you going by district? And number one, number two, in the acquisition of the lots, are we going for lots that are kind of what I call the easy targets, the ones that you mentioned, one here that had 3 owners? That one obviously would be more complex in acquiring the deed to, but how are we doing that process? How's that process working?
In terms of the prioritization, and that's the reason why I mentioned there's multiple facets of how we're going to prioritize. Some of those are going to be based on ones that are both the simplest to acquire initially, although in some cases we may also find some that have an opportunity for retrofitting as well. So while they might not always be the simplest in terms of the work that needs to be done, we would always look at those two things in conjunction. So I think it's going to be a variety of those things. In all my years of working in stormwater for the last 20 years, I have not yet found any, I've not found very many standards that can be applied that says there's one size fits all. Most things in stormwater and drainage have so many variables in them, they really require a case-by-case basis. We will typically look at them either on the basis of which watershed they are in, as well as what's the benefit for water quality. In some cases, some of these, even though it seems strange to say, something with multiple property owners on it might actually be simpler to deal with than a project where it is a lost title, so to speak, because if a developer owned it and held control over it, and then it's been 20 years and they've let that LLC lapse, that's going to take a significant amount of legal time and staff time to chase that down and make that happen. So while it would be something we would want to ultimately bring into the program, it would not be something that would be quickly done.
Great. Is this a voluntary program? So say an HOA is maintaining their retention ponds and they're like, hey, you know what, we're good. We like what we're doing. We'd like to opt out. Is that an option?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. That was something that I did not emphasize in this. There is nothing mandatory in this that says that someone has to participate. Any property owner is always welcome to continue to perform their own maintenance. The only thing that would happen in that case is the city would still perform the required inspections, and we would just notify them if there are deficiencies so that they can then correct them.
Very good. Are we purchasing, or is there a dollar amount? What I'm trying to get at is the estimated cost. Have we have any numbers that by the time we're finished, we would have spent X amount of dollars to bring this project into compliance or to fruition?
As far as acquisition costs, we don't anticipate having to spend dollars. We are expecting that these are going to be donated. Again, it's a voluntary program, so we would not anticipate purchasing property in that regard as far as just a wholesale thing. I believe for this budget year, I think we had about $400,000 set aside for doing maintenance and retrofit work in these ponds as we're moving forward.
Gotcha. So in essence, this is a very beneficial project with a public-private partnership. Hopefully, we'll get a lot of participation from the public. I do like to hear that we're not going out and buying the land if we're going to take over maintaining it. I think that's a win for everybody. Outside of going back to one of your first slides, I'll finish up in just a second, Chairman. You had mentioned mowing or regular maintenance. Is that something, if the city owns the pond and the homeowners around it or adjacent to it want to maintain it, or is that a simple legal agreement, or is that a verbal agreement, or how do you see that coming into the mechanics of that?
That would be, if there's an easement agreement, then that would typically, it would just be written into the easement agreement as far as what the city's obligations are, and just clarifying that anything beyond that would be on the property owner. The current, and I mentioned briefly the reference to the 2 sets of standard documents for the different types of practices that there are. Those, for example, are generally going to call for mowing and vegetation cutting, most of them on a 3 to 4 times per year at most.
Okay.
Based on the type of practice that it is. So that would probably be about the most that we have. Some people might actually be using some of these spaces, and if they are, we will have no problem at all if they continue to mow them beyond that. So some of these, honestly, if you were to walk up to them and look at them, I know some of them from 20 plus years ago, you could walk up and you wouldn't even know it's there. People are using it as their backyard, and it's very subtle. In terms of what's seen, they're not all in your face obvious.
Sure. Do you think that agreement would transfer, in your mind, over with if the property is sold? So kind of an
Yes.
automatic renewal with the new property owner?
Yes.
Okay.
These would be permanent easements to the city, and,
Right.
and there would be covenants that would run with the land on those easement agreements. In the case of a fee simple, for example, like a community lot
Yeah.
or an HOA, then in those cases, we would have to, if somebody adjacent wanted to work on those, we'd just have to work out something special with those individuals, and we would make a determination at that point whether that's something that would run with the land, or if it's just something that would expire upon upon the sale of the adjacent land. Those would be special ones we'd have to look at.
Very good.
Adjacent to a community lot.
Bill, I applaud you. Thank you for doing such a great job on that. I think it's a great initiative, and I'm very proud to see the city step forward with that program. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there any other questions for Mr. Payne? Thank you very much for an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Now, at this time, Councilman Henderson, you have something you want to bring before us? There you
Yes,
go. You got it.
am I on? Okay. I've got a question for our attorney. Phil, this week, we're doing the second reading of our bid ordinance collection. Should the amendments that were made last week not be in the backup documents?
The amendments that were made last week are included in the document itself that is in the council. If you want to have a revision to that, I don't know what you want to
Well,
have the first version and the second version?
No. So, we can pull up our backup documents
Yes, sir.
on the agenda. When I pull up the backup document for the bid collection, it's the old one. It does not reflect any of the amendments that were made last week.
Those amendments should be on the agenda for this evening here.
Well, that's the reason I'm asking.
Yes, sir. I
The
will,
latest version that I got does not include the amendments
let me
that were made last week
double check.
in the backup documents.
Okay, sir.
When you click on the link, that's all I'm saying.
Let me get my copy of it up right now. Yes, sir. You need to have the version that was as amended here in the documents. I don't see that on the list. Yes, sir.
So will you see that that's
Yes, sir. That will be
brought
there.
before us here at 6?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I just want to make sure we're voting on the right.
Yes, sir.
absolutely, Councilman, Mr. Vice Chair. All right, make sure that they're a part of the information required
Yes, sir.
that we agreed to last week.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay, is that it, Mr. Vice Chair?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, with that being brought before us, that part is now closed. I will now turn this over to Chairwoman Demetrius Coonrod, Youth and Family Development.
Thank you so much. And as you know, we're about to present from the best department in the city of Chattanooga, Youth and Family Development. So we're gonna move to approve minutes. Thank you, thank you. Coach, they just refused to let us be great. But if you'll come forward so we can start our presentation, please.
Good afternoon, Council. Thanks for having us here this afternoon. We are going to be sharing about a new initiative with the Office of Early Learning called Barbershop Books. Jaleesa Brumfield is our community engagement specialist, and she brought this to the city. And so I'm going to turn the mic over to her to share this amazing program and what has happened in just a couple weeks across the city.
Hi, and thank you for the opportunity. Like she said, I'm Jaleesa Brumfield, and yeah, I'm the community engagement specialist, and I wanted to start by sharing a story with you all. Okay, so last week I delivered my last bookshelf to the Parlor Boys barbershop on Brainerd Road. And when I went into the barbershop, there was this little boy that I was instantly drawn to because he was cute, but there was something about him that drew me to him. So as we put the rug out and we put the bookshelf out, the little boy just kind of looked curiously. He didn't say anything. I asked him would he like to help, and he said no. So he just kind of watched us put this bookshelf and rug together. So once the owner and I were done putting everything in place, the little boy got up and he ran to the bookshelf. And he grabbed the book called No David. And he laid on his back and he just began flipping through the pages. So as he was doing that, the guy in the picture, I'm sorry, I didn't get any names. The guy in the picture walked in and he asked him, he said, "What are you reading?" And the little boy looked at him and said, "I can't read." So, yeah. So the gentleman took 2 minutes out of his day. He sat down beside him and he said, "I'm gonna tell you this. All you gotta do is look at the pictures and tell a story." So the little boy just kind of looked at him, and he began talking and pointing to the pictures and telling a story. And before he knew it, he was done reading the book. And the guy congratulated him. He celebrated him, and he said, "See, you can read, right?" So the little boy just kind of looked at him and smiled. And it was in that moment that I got confirmation that this program is 100% needed in Chattanooga. So as the little boy, as this event happened, it brought me back to what Alvin Irby, the founder, said about barbershop books. He said that boys identify themselves as readers by connecting fun books to a male-centered space and by involving Black men in boys' early reading experiences. So if it had not been for this rug and for this bookshelf, that connection, that beautiful connection that happened may have never happened. So in Chattanooga, there are some pretty devastating statistics stacked against Black boys. 83% of Black boys go into 4th grade not on reading level. So 8 out of every 10 Black boys who enters into a 4th grade classroom are not reading on reading level. So I have a public health background, and one of the best practices in public health is to really examine a statistic and to take a step back and to ask yourself, how did we get there? So as I researched more and more and more, I found another statistic that stated that underserved boys also go into kindergarten with 3,000 to 5,000 less words than their peers. So this illustrates the picture that black boys are not starting at the start line. They're actually starting to step back. And this is where the Office of Early Learning comes in, because we really fight hard for inequalities and inequities within learning and education. So we wanted to really, we dug deep to find a program that could provide exposures to literacy that boys and girls may not have ever had the opportunity to have. And we also simply just wanted to foster a love for reading and a love for imagining, because we know that boys are visionaries. And if they can't see themselves somewhere, then who knows where they'll end. Okay, so if we go a little bit deeper into why black boys are not reading on reading level and the literacy issues, Alvin Irby, the founder of Barbershop Book, identified 4 key factors that contribute to lack of literacy in black boys. And those factors are limited access to engaging reading materials. So do boys have books that they want to read, or is it books that people are forcing them to read? Lack of black men in lack of black men in black boys' early reading experiences. So just like the story I shared, are black boys seeing their uncles and their dads and their cousins and their barbers reading? Having few culturally competent educators, so we all know that there is a lack of black men represented in education. And educational systems that are unresponsive to black boys' individual learning needs. So yeah, we can say that everyone has a unique learning need, but in this instance, we're focusing on black boys because that's where the educational gaps are. So what is being done? Barbershop Books. So Barbershop Books is a community-based program that creates child-friendly spaces in barbershops and provides early literacy training to barbers. So we held our first literacy training last month in August, and of the 10 barbers who are participating in the program, 7 showed, and they were fully engaged, asking lots of leading questions. And it was also a special moment because HCDE sent some of their counselors out who are located in the opportunity zones, and they were just excited to finally put a face with the barbers that the kids go to school and talk about so often. Barbershop Book leverages the cultural significance of barbershops in black communities to increase boys' access to culturally relevant, age-appropriate, and gender-responsive children's books, and to increase out-of-school time reading amongst young black boys. So the overall goal is to provide a resource for black boys that they may not get every day. The goal is not to force kids to read in barbershops, because you don't want to change that dynamic of what a barbershop is to where they'll begin dreading going to the barbershop, but it's just a resource for boys when they go into the spaces. Okay, so I wanted to show you a TED Talk of Alvin Irby, the founder of Barbershop Books.
Policies that require students to sit statue still or to work in complete silence, these environments often exclude the individual learning needs, the interests, and the expertise of children, especially black boys. Many of the children's books promoted to black boys focus on serious topics like slavery, civil rights, and biographies. Less than 2% of teachers in the United States are black males, and a majority of black boys are raised by single mothers. There are literally young black boys who have never seen a black man reading, or never had a black man encourage him to read. What cultural factors, what social cues are present that would lead a young black boy to conclude that reading is even something he should do. This is why I created Barbershop Books. It's a literacy nonprofit that creates child-friendly reading spaces in barbershops. The mission is simple: to help young black boys identify as readers. Lots of black boys go to the barbershop once or twice a month. Some see their barbers more than they see their fathers. Barbershop Books connects reading to a male-centered space and involves black men and boys' early reading experiences. This identity-based reading program uses a curated list of children's books recommended by black boys. These are the books that they actually want to read. Scholastic's 2016 Kids and Family Report found that the number one thing children look for when choosing a book is a book that will make them laugh. So if we're serious about helping black boys and other children to read when it's not required, we need to incorporate relevant male reading models into early literacy and exchange some of the children's books that adults love so much for funny, silly, or even gross books like Gross Greg. You call them boogers. Greg calls them delicious little sugars. That laugh, that positive reaction, or gross reaction some of you just had, black boys deserve and desperately need more of that.
Okay, so that was Alvin Irby, and he is the founder of Barbershop Books. So his personal connection to increasing literacy scores in black boys come from his experience as a kindergarten teacher. So I forgot to say this, and I'll mention it. But, so my personal connection to Barbershop Books, it wasn't just me scrolling on Facebook and thinking that it was cool. Of course, the statistics were alarming, but also I am a mother, and I have a son, who was not on reading level. But I was able to afford private tutoring for my son. And I mean, it's 2019, so we should all know by now that everyone does not have access to that. So our overall goal of this program is just to be able to provide books to young boys to succeed as readers. Okay, so there are 10 barbershops who are participating in the program, and they are all located in the Opportunity Zone areas, again, because of educational needs, except for one. So Live and Let Live was put on the list simply because of their history in Chattanooga. They are the first, they were the first black barbershop in Chattanooga, and Mr. McGee actually said to me, "I'm so happy that I could see this," and he's 93 years old, so that's big. So then we have VIP Cuts, Blades Barbershop, the Gentleman's Lounge, Johnny Blades, Clee's Barbershop, Bear's Barbershop, who is one of the mayor's favorites, so we had to make sure that that one was in there. And then we had Tim Baker's Barber College, Shelby's Barber Parlor, and then Barber Kings. So, speaking of Barber Kings, we have the owner of Barber King here today to kind of share his perspective on what he thinks Barbershop Books can do within his shop. And yes, he's been very vocal and very helpful in the entire process. His name is Duran Wiley, and he can come and share.
Hello, how's everybody doing today? Well, I really think it's a great idea, considering the statistics for young black boys. And considering we have a lot of black boys come to the barbershop, hey, it's a perfect idea just to run that through. And I couldn't see any other way. Got me kind of nervous up here. Everybody's staring at me. But yeah, I mean, hey, if there's any opportunity I can have to help out our generation of kids, I would do it anytime. Well, you know, we're escalating ours. We're gonna even put up a shelf for older kids, because this little shelf kind of turned out pretty good. It's only inspired a lot of other kids. So hey, I need to do a bigger shelf with bigger books. So hey, we're gonna inspire not only younger kids but older kids to keep reading, and just set up a whole other area for kids to study, do their homework, you know, stuff like that. I think that's something to help out. I mean, can I go now? All right, y'all take care.
You're fine. And of course, we couldn't forget about a parent's perspective. So Summer and Eli were actually featured on News Channel 9 as Eli kind of, he took full advantage of the library, calling it his own. So they named him as the ambassador, which is fine with us if he wants to be the ambassador. But Summer will share her story.
Hello, good evening, I think, or afternoon, evening. As Jaleesa said, my name is Summer Elliott. I am the mother of Eli. He is actually 3 years old. So the first thing that I want to say is that I'm super, super excited for this opportunity, not only for my 3-year-old who is in that stage where he's developing those skills, right? But also for all the other boys that will be able to partake in this program. For me, what I see is just really creating this space of enjoyment. You know, making reading like a first option versus a second. And I am actually a single mom, so I actually take my son to the barbershop twice a month. And what I notice is a lot of kids, they come in and they have tablets or phones, and they're very disengaged because they're in their phones. And so having this space with the bright colors, the carpet, having culturally sensitive books and age appropriate, I think is quite clever, or I guess I should say intentional, with the Barbershop Books program. When Eli went in last week to get his hair cut, as soon as he walked in, he saw the area and he ran over to it. And he started sorting through the books. And he picked up this book and he looked at me and he said, "Mommy, that's me." And I looked at the cover and it was this brown boy with this curly hair and he had a pickle. And that was such a powerful moment, right? Because that moment that my child had, he doesn't get often. Because often we don't see books at something simple as going to the doctor's office. We don't see books that have images that look like him. And that does so much for our kids' confidence and believing in themselves and their perspective on reading. So thank you for letting me share with you. Thank you to the City of Chattanooga and to Jaleesa, because I think this is so heartwarming for our children.
So next, how can you help?
So how can you help, my wonderful council? What we are hoping is that you will promote the barbers that are barbershop book barbers, that you will share this story on social media, share the barbers with your friends and colleagues, your churches, your community groups, and just share the work that's happening in the barbershops across the Opportunity Zone. If you have an opportunity, we've already had conversations, the Urban League and Sankofa have reached out, and they're interested in partnering and supporting this effort. So if you have people who are interested in buying books or being supportive of the barbershop book effort, please refer them to us. We've promised the barbers that they will not have people running in, dumping off moldy books that have been sitting in their basement for 5 years and wanting to help that way. So we're going to help connect the barbers with community resources as they come up. We're happy to do that. We are accessible, available, and ready to make this just as awesome as it possibly can be. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We have a few questions. Councilman Gilbert?
Yes, this past Friday, my grandson Alvin came home. The first thing he said to me was, and he went to that man's shop in the very back. They want to speak that much. Yeah, there you go. He came in and said, "Dad, Granddad, they got a barbershop book shop." I said, "He do?" 'Cause I haven't seen it yet. I said, "Okay, that's great." So it is an impact. He's in high school, so he noticed it. So it's a good thing going on. Thanks.
Thank you.
Chip, Councilman Anderson? Oh, you had nothing to say? This? No. Okay. Councilman Ledford?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Bravo. No, seriously, bravo. You're putting books in kids' hands, and I can't thank you enough for that effort. And I hope everyone who's listening to this seriously looks at what you're doing and put a book in these kids' hands. It's magical. It's wonderful. I can't thank you enough. I just thank you. Great job.
You're gonna make me cry.
Councilman Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I expected a little bit more on the how you can help piece. You know? So I have a question, and I believe you somewhat answered it by talking about whether or not we know people that may be wanting to get involved or wanting to help provide books or whatnot. I would really think of that more as maybe potentially providing funding so you can source them and source exactly what you need, source what you are hearing is being desired. I mean, that's what is making this work, is the examples that you gave. I mean, you've got 10 barbershops, maybe 15 to $20 per. Doesn't sound like a big number. So my question would be, I mean, what would it take to not only stock these shelves, but to allow these kids to take home their favorite book when they are visiting? You know, if they find a book that is engaging to them, that is really exciting, I would hate to take it out of their hand when they leave. So is that also something that is in consideration to, to continue finding those sources to keep a supply replenished so that these kids can also take home that excitement and show it to mom and dad, show it to people, and talk about it?
Yes, so along with the package, we got a few replacement books, but if you go to barbershopbooks.com, there is a link to where you can purchase books, and they will send us the books. So what happens right now is if a kid takes home a book, the barber would just text or call me and tell me that that book needs to be replaced. And of course, we only have, a certain amount. So yes, for anyone who would like to donate books, the link is barbershopbooks.com. And in the top right corner, it says donate now. So you'll pay for the book essentially, and they'll send it to us.
That's great. Ariel, is that up on the city's website somewhere?
It will be. We're working on that right now. We didn't quite expect this to be as wildly popular as it is, so we're working on getting a website so that people can link straight to that and donate from our website.
That would be fantastic, as
Yeah,
I'm
we'll
sure
let you know
many
when
of
that
us would be
happens.
more than happy to share that and encourage anybody that can possibly give to help to the program. Thank you so much.
Councilman Byrd?
Just had to chime in and say thank you. I think this is a wonderful program. Man, thank you, brother. I really appreciate you. I see a lot of friends, and the young man that was sitting on the floor reading, I know him personally and the trials that he's go through. And just to see him sitting with that little kid and the education I know that he can pour in, and just about life as well, that connection means so much. So I just want to salute you and thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate this because just as you stated, that our black boys, even our black girls, we don't ever see or rarely see an image of us in books, magazines, even our superheroes that they most definitely idolize. And when we think about this being a tool that's in our toolbox that we're providing for our kids to read, and we're chopping. This is what makes youth and family development so great in our early learning, because we're not afraid to chop away from the pipeline of prison. This is where it begins, right? When we're talking about early learning from the cradle up until 12th grade, right? We want to make sure that we have a solid, equitable foundation. And when it comes to reading, so also like with our Lexio program that we have, it teaches our kids how to enunciate the words, formulate the sounds, put words together to eventually make full sentences. I stole that for Coach. But also with the book Barbers to Books, and you get to see them paired with a male that we oftentimes that they don't have because we're single parent homes, as the data sometimes chooses to hone in on and reiterate that. So it's a great opportunity for our boys to see that, to be exposed to literacy and common spaces that they share with black men, right? Now this doesn't take away from any other ethnic group that reads, right? So we most definitely want anybody to share in this. But I think that a great campaign that we can host, because oftentimes we're supportive of all the time, United Way and their campaign kickoff. I would like to see us, the employees of the city of Chattanooga, how many we have, 1,200, 1,500 employees. Let's kick off a campaign to purchase a book. So when we're purchasing pizza or we having fish fries to raise money for United Way, let's purchase a book to make sure that these books for barbers are fully equipped. And if they need to send a book home with a kid that's reading, then we can replenish that book, right? So we can call it our own personal Dr. Seuss campaign, right? And so this is an awesome campaign. Thank you so much for bringing this to the city of Chattanooga. And as always, thank you all for allowing youth and family development to be great. Thank you.
Councilwoman.
Any? You already, Councilman Byrd?
We're good. Okay, and another, before end the presentation, I definitely wanted to acknowledge a superhero to me that's in our audience, Miss Carissa. That's education and everything. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's an honor to have you in here as well. So thank you for coming. I know. That's what we like.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, because we'll turn it over to Economic and Community Development.
Excuse me, Council Lady, you wanted to review 2 items upcoming on the agenda.
Yeah, thank you. I thought
You're
Mitch
welcome.
was going to say something about it, but Coach, will you, or area?
Yeah, I think I'm going to review
Yeah,
them
so
with
we
you.
had a question. Jerry had a question about our, on a 3-week, for future considerations.
Yes.
For the 24th, he had a couple of questions.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, thank you.
He just wanted to know what it was, if you can explain.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm like, was there a specific question? Yeah. So thank you for giving me a chance to explain these to you. So the first one, the curriculum is for creative curriculum, which is the same curriculum that the Hamilton County Pre-K uses, the same curriculum that our Head Start program uses. And so the mayor announced in State of the City, and we are starting to work toward implementing, bringing that to all of the Seats for Success. So the 1,000 seats that we're opening of high-quality childcare across the city. And one of the things that we are working on with those programs is once you reach 3 stars and open those seats, excellence doesn't stop. So we continue to work that muscle of excellence, including a high-quality research-based curriculum. So that's what that first one is. And then the second one is, this is our annual ask to you to go into partnership with a series of childcare programs to execute the Early Head Start Childcare Partnership Program. So that's one of our Head Start grants that we have, serving 150 kids across the city.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Mitchell, does that answer all your questions? Thank you. Thanks, Ariel.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Move to, all right. All right, welcome to Economic and Community Development Committee. I see that on ordinance final reading 5A, we have already read that into the record. And we will start, if it's okay with the council, we will start with next week, Tuesday, September the 17th, 2019, resolutions 7A.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement to exercise option to renew with Brian M. Cotter in substantially the form attached for lease of a house located at 324 Bass Road on tax map number 1581C021.01 and further identified as the Brown Acres rental house in consideration of $800 per month and providing of security services at Brown Acres and Brainerd golf courses for an additional term of 1 year with an option to renew for one additional term of 1 year.
Seeing no questions, 7B.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Economic and Community Development to enter into an agreement in substantially the form attached with Core Associates for the design and construction of a natural playground at East Lake Park in the amount of $150,000.
Seeing. You good? Thank you, sir. Awesome job. 7C.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a non-profit standard lease form agreement in substantially the form attached with the Forgotten Child Fund, Inc. to lease approximately 19,560 square feet of warehouse space at 1815 East Main Street, identified as tax map number 156BD009, for a term of 1 year with the option to renew for 3 additional terms of 1 year each for the amount of $1 per year.
Okay. Seeing no questions. Under short-term vacation rental applications, we seem to have several. We start with 7B, please.
A resolution approving short-term vacation rental application number 19 STBR 00120 for property located at 1648 Market Street.
Chairman Oglesby? Okay. Okay. So I would assume he's okay with that one. 7E.
A resolution approving short-term vacation rental application number 19 STBR 00122 for property located at 3035 St. Elmo Avenue.
Okay. 7F.
A resolution approving short-term vacation rental application number 19 STBR 00123 for property located at 3039 St. Elmo Avenue.
All right. Seeing that we have no questions, I will now turn it over to see about our STVR changes or things that discussion we can have about that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Council, for letting us talk about short-term vacation rentals for just a little bit. So we're talking about short-term vacation rentals, which is, is basically a business license to operate a short-term vacation rental out of your home. And anything that's a short-term is 30 days or less. So timeline here, we first started talking about short-term vacation rentals in May of 2009 when it was a zoning issue. And I'll go back and say it used to be a matter of zoning to be able to have a short-term vacation rental. R3 or R4 was where it was allowed anywhere in the city. And then on October the 1st of 2017, we started our current short-term vacation rental ordinance, and it established an overlay district that only short-term vacation rentals could operate in that overlay district or in R3 and R4 that were existing prior to that date. Moving forward, we've begun to discuss short-term vacation rentals and some adjustments we were proposing to council to make to that ordinance. We held a public input meeting on August the 22nd and 23rd, and we've solicited information from council as well. On September the 10th, today, of course, we're having this meeting here to talk about it. And the proposed dates for the first and second ordinance reading would be October the 1st and October the 8th. The things we're going to talk about here are the public meeting and some of the issues that were identified, and there's nothing surprising there. They're the same issues that you probably are well aware of as well. We're going to add some definitions, and we're going to move some things to definitions. We're going to talk about the opposition hearings and how they're approved or denied, and the opposition letters that trigger those hearings. And we're going to talk about the streamlining that we need to make in order to be a little more flexible and simple in the application process and the certificate process. And there's one thing that we need to do to bring us into compliance with state law, and we're going to propose that. And then we're going to talk about the application fee, and then we've got some statistics to look at as well. So in the public meetings, we had one on August 22nd and 23rd. The one was for those opposed, and one was for those that were for. And of course, we had a little bit of both show up at each of them. We had about 15 at the first one and about 30 people at the second one. And they talked about things that you've already known about. Should the overlay include the entire city? Can we limit the number of short-term vacation rentals in the city? How can homeowners apply to be in the short-term vacation rental? Should there be a petition process? Can we eliminate non-owner occupied short-term vacation rentals? How are short-term vacation rentals impacting the integrity of neighborhoods, and are they reducing the affordable housing stock in the city? Should opposition be within a specific distance to a short-term vacation rental location? And should there be a limit on STVRs in neighborhoods? Should there be restrictions in particular zones? Renewal should be automatic and free. And currently, one letter triggers a opposition hearing, and should that be adjusted, and should there be a proximity to that? And what is owner occupied? If you own the house next to you, or if you own an apartment next to yours and you apply for a short-term vacation rental, should that be something that would be considered owner occupied, since you're next to it all the time and be able to monitor it? And then there was a general frustration with overlay limits and opposition hearings from council. So the first thing that we're proposing is actually adding definitions for owner occupied and non-owner occupied. They're not currently in the ordinance. And so this would give us a definition of each. So a owner occupied would be a short-term vacation rental property in which the applicant is present on the property at the same time as the rental occupants for the duration of the rental period. That doesn't mean you couldn't go to the grocery store, go to work, and have someone renting a space in your home, but you would need to be there. If you went away for 2 weeks and rented your home out, then you would be in violation of the certificates you have. That would be a non-owner occupied status that you would have there. And then a non-owner occupied would be a short-term vacation rental property in which the applicant is not present on the property at the same time as the rental. And this is something that already exists in there, and this is what we talked about earlier, this grandfather provision really. It establishes that R3 and R4 for those outside of the overlay zone, and they by right have the ability to have a short-term vacation rental, and it keeps that, it just adds it to the definition section of the ordinance. It was under the certificate conditions earlier. And then this is opposition to the certificate. So currently there is an opposition process. There's a minimum of one letter that triggers an opposition hearing. It allows for unreasonable concern and cause. You don't have to state any reason why. You might not like somebody, you might not like short-term vacation rentals in general, and that would be the reason that you would oppose it. And there's no proximity required either. You can be from any part of the overlay, and actually you can be from any part of town and oppose a short-term vacation rental, and it would trigger a opposition hearing. And currently, of course, as y'all know, City Council hosts and decides the opposition hearings. So one thing we're proposing here is a minimum of 5 letters in order to trigger an opposition hearing. So currently, there's about an average of 31 letters goes out to that 300-foot proximity to the location for a short-term vacation rental certificate when somebody applies, if you're a non-owner occupied. Owner-occupieds don't have the same regulation on them. So if there are 31 there and we required 5 letters, that would be about 16% of those would be opposed that had been notified of the short-term vacation rental that would be in their proximity. And then we want to think about defining specific concern and cause, although that's a little more difficult because once you start something like that, it's difficult to stop. So how would you name every single reason that someone could be opposed to something in there? We need to put some more thought into that before we propose something. And then we want to consider proximity. Like I said, we currently send out letters in a 300-foot radius of the property that applies for the short-term vacation rental. So if we're already doing that, maybe we should consider only allowing those people within that 300-foot proximity to be the ones that would trigger an opposition hearing if they were the ones that were sending the letters in. And then consider removing the opposition hearings from council and assign to an existing board. If we did something like that, we would have to possibly change the ordinance. Y'all would have to grant authority to a board, and the city attorney's office is also looking at the enabling legislation at the state that would allow another board to take on that responsibility, and those are things that we need to figure out before we come back and propose that. I left this in there. This is already in the ordinance, but I just left it in to state the obvious that we already send those letters out to residents within 300 feet of the subject property. That's not changing. None of this is changing in the ordinance. This is kind of a back of the house kind of thing here. So currently the ordinance requires specific information be listed on the certificate, name, address, phone number, things like that. And so we're just wanting to change that to allow LDO to make those decisions so that they, if they had to make a change to something, that they could be a little more nimble, wouldn't have to come back to this body and ask for minor changes to be on the certificate in order to make those changes on their certificate. And we don't know what the state would require at some other time either, if they would require something else to be on there. And then another back of the house kind of thing, this is the application itself. This would remove that specific information from the application. LDO has other applications that they do all the time. They're used to requiring the information that's necessary, and that's not a part of the ordinances in the other application processes. And the one thing that this does do, though, is it sets a time limit on the application itself. So a lot of times, some people will come in and apply for a short-term vacation rental, and an inspector will go out, look at the property, they may find that there's a violation or they're not up to code in some areas, and require them to make that repair. And sometimes they won't come back, so that application just sits there and it never ends. So this would invalidate an incomplete application after 60 days. And so that person could automatically reapply, but that way it would set a time limit on the application itself. And then this would bring us into compliance with state law. So our current ordinance has, you can pull a certificate if there are 2 documented violations of city code or state law in 1 year, 2 in 1 year. And state law has changed, and state law says that there needs to be 3 documented violations of city code or state law, period. There's no time limit on it. So we need to change that in order to be compliant with state law. Nothing else changes in that except for that 2 year to 3, or 2 instances to 3. And then finally, the last proposal that we're talking about is changing the fee to standardize the fee. Currently, it's $75 for a owner-occupied certificate, $125 for a non-owner-occupied certificate, and $50 for a renewal. All the other permits in LDO are $150 is basically what the basic amount that they charge for that. So we're proposing to bring that up to $150 across the board for all of those. And then just some quick statistics to go through to see what we're problem solving for here. So there are approximately 608 short-term vacation rentals, illegal and legal, operating in the city right now. And so out of an approximate number of households, which is around 70,181, that's less than 1% of the residences are operating short-term vacation rentals, 0.086%. And then it's broken down by council districts. So you can see in your council districts what the number is. Councilman Oglesby has the highest number at 1.19% because of the density of downtown and the St. Elmo area. They're just more located here. The others are under 1% each. And of course, 4, 5, and 6 is 0. They're not permitted in those areas. They may be operating in those areas, but if they are operating, they're illegal. And I'll show you a way to let us know about that in just a second. And then this is per neighborhood association, not homeowners association, but neighborhood association. So as you know, those are self-defined boundaries that nonprofits or associations set up. So that's not sanctioned by the city. The city doesn't draw those for them. We don't approve those. And there are some there, like the very top one, which has 76 residences in that neighborhood association that they identify, and 19 of them are currently short-term vacation rentals, which is 25% of those residences in that neighborhood association. So there are 317 permitted short-term vacation rentals in the overlay, and there are 173 illegal. in the overlay. There are 2 outside of the overlay that are permitted, and there are 136 that are operating illegally. We know of the illegal ones, we know that we've cited about 75% of them. The other 25%, we don't know exactly where they are yet, but we're working on that. Host Compliance is a partner that we use to help us monitor the market so that they can help us identify those that are operating illegally in the city, and we will cite them. However, we're limited by the workload that the city court has, so we're bound by only citing around 22 per month to city court. And that's what we're proposing. So we've talked about owner-occupied and non-owner occupied. We've changed R3 and R4 to be defined. We're proposing replacing council with an existing board, moving from 1 letter to 5 letters and within a 300-foot radius. And we're changing this application process and the certificate itself to reduce confusion and complexity. And we're changing the conditions there to 3 documented violations of city code or state law to reflect state law. And we're proposing a across-the-board fee of $150. And if you or any of your constituents are aware of a short-term vacation rental that may be operating illegally, they can call this number, or they can send an email to scvr@chattanooga.gov anonymously, and we will go out and inspect it. And if it is operating, we will cite them, and we'll allow the court to handle it. And that's our presentation.
All right, thank you so much. Great presentation, sir. I have one question. Councilman Leffert. Hit it again, sir. There we go.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. Thanks for your presentation. So, in looking back, it looks like a lot of your recommendations are what we would call sometimes in zoning housekeeping. Some back-end LDO permitting language that gives you either flexibility or tightens up certain particulars. The one thing that drew my attention was the city council not hearing the cases anymore. So did you have a particular board in mind that you can share with us? Because it's a little vague at this point.
Well, there are a few council people who have suggested a board to us, and the Board of Zoning Appeals meets monthly already. And yes, I did say this was not a zoning issue, and so proposing that the Board of Zoning Appeals would hear these types of things, but they do meet monthly, and it's not a large workload for them. We're reaching out to them to find out if they would be interested in that. We don't know if they would or not, but we also need to rely on the city attorney's office to make sure that we can actually do that.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, this is going to be up to you.
All right.
But when we asked the board, because I recently did this, where I went to sign appeals, and because they were having some difficulty in meeting and hearing cases, and I went to both of those boards and I asked their opinion, and I thought that was the right thing to do. I did notice that in the audience, we have the chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I know you're making that recommendation, but Mr. Chairman, it's what I heard.
We're proposing that. We don't know enough about that right now to make that a recommendation to change.
So-
We need to rely on the city attorney's office to help guide us to make that decision.
Okay, so I'm not going to, so you're not making that recommendation to us at this point? Because I would like to know what the chairman of the board actually has to say, or has an opinion on that, if this council was interested in hearing that opinion. So I'm going to ask that we get on that particular suggestion rather quickly and check with the Board of Zoning Appeals. I mean, you could probably do that pretty quick since the chairman's sitting right here, but.
And we've talked with staff, and they're reaching out to them and are in the process of doing that.
Very good, thank you. So the rest of the items are pretty much, it feels like it's just our housekeeping items. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you so much, Councilman. Councilman Chip Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you see us having another committee meeting where we're going to discuss this publicly? Because I guess my question, and I'm curious as to how this council feels like the proposed changes make their way into a revised ordinance.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair. I think at the end of the day, that's going to be definitely a conversation that we are going to have and discussion to see if we do all agree with these. I know earlier today at 1:30, it was discussed that things should have been presented to us in a different manner outside of this setting. And I think now that we have this information to look over, I would ask that you please send this to every council person, and so that we can continue to review it. And then after that, I think maybe if not another committee, we will discuss putting this into action if there's not any other questions.
Okay, I have a follow-up for Richard.
All right.
State law requirement that you referred to
Right.
earlier, what is that? What does the state law require that we're currently not doing?
So currently, a certificate could be pulled if there are 2 documented violations of city or state code. And that would be if you were cited for noise and you went to court and you were found guilty 3 times
Okay.
over.
Is that the only one, though? I thought there was another one.
No, that's it.
Huh?
That's it.
Okay, all right.
That's it, Chair. All right. Councilman Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That actually was one of my questions about what is a violation.
Yeah.
And so you got that one. I've had a conversation with Donald Williams before about what constitutes owner and non-owner occupied. And it seems to me what constitutes is how they apply. And I know of 2 houses for sure, by the way, in District 2, that they are non-owner occupied, but they have applied and obtained a license of owner occupied. And I believe what Ms. Williams said is if they're receiving their mail at that address, then that could pass muster in a court of law as far as them qualifying to be owner occupied. And I'm wondering if there's any suggestions that you all are looking at or would look at to tighten that up some.
Where they're receiving their tax bill
Yes.
should be their address, should be their
Yes.
home address.
And I'm
So-
telling you, I know of 2 for sure that where they're receiving the tax bill on that house is not where they live.
Yes, sir. And we'll look into that if you'll let us know where they are. I think Donna already knows where those are that you're
Yeah,
talking
I know
about.
she knows, I know
And
she knows
so-
one. Another issue is the hearing. I guess I'm just going to look at the council and not ask for an answer right now. But before we go around asking different boards if they want to take this over, should we not have a vote as a body that determines whether or not there's 5 of us that want to see us do that?
Of course.
Just a procedural process, as the learned councilwoman likes to say. On your one statistic that showed the different neighborhood associations, I thought that's, by the way, great work digging in like that, great work. But I'm wondering, I saw a couple of neighborhood associations in District 2 that they used to, I don't know if they still do, but they have duplication of addresses in 2 different, the same address in 2 different neighborhood associations. I don't know if they still do that or not, but did you all try to dig into that?
I did not, but I can look into that.
Okay.
I know that that's very difficult because they self-identify
Sure,
their
yeah,
neighborhoods. And
yeah.
so, there may be one that says the left side of the street's in mine, and there may be another that says the left side of the street's in mine.
Yeah.
And so,
And I don't know if it's even, super important, but it would, I'm wondering about the accuracy of things and I know there's some neighborhood associations that in North Chattanooga kind of cross over a little bit.
right, and we relied on the information from GIS and from our staff at LDO to get that, and we'll look into that and find out, though.
Okay.
I didn't look quite that deeply to see if there were duplicate addresses in there.
Great stuff, though, great stuff. You answered the question about legal versus illegal because you had a large number there of legal and illegal, but then you separated that out, so that took care of that. One thing that I request that I put in, and I didn't see it in any of the proposed changes, and I'd just like to know the reason for that, is again, in some neighborhoods in District 2, there's been applications that literally houses have no off-street parking. And so they're listing on their request, parking and it's on-street parking. And I guess it's about supply and demand. If a customer comes in and they can't find a parking place, maybe that hurts the unit as far as being able to rent it. But it also seems like it's a little bit of a dishonest advertising. And it, to me, seems, even though we haven't clarified it, so I can't call it dishonest in the application because we didn't clarify that, but I was wondering if there would be a shot at clarifying that on the application process where you say how many parking spaces you got and somebody says 6, how many of those are on street?
We can do that. We talked about adding that, what is on street and what is on the property. A
Yes.
lot of the problems that we run into are the older homes and older neighborhoods that don't have that.
Yeah, right.
And so, you know, in a newer home, when you get a certificate of occupancy, you've met the parking requirements for that home. You know, of course, you're not renting it out at the point when you do that, or not a lot of times anyway. So parking is one of the things that we've looked at that's been very difficult to monitor.
Right.
And so we can look more into it and find out what kind of recommendations we could bring for that application process. But that is one of the things, too, that we're able to have while in LDO, so that as they study this and they find out more about what kind of issues are around that, they're able to add to that application and to that certificate to make sure that when we go out and check it, if somebody calls about one being in violation, that we'll have some ammunition there to make sure that they're abiding by what they said they were going to abide by.
And I'd just like to make clear, in my opinion, I'm not saying I'd turn or want to turn something down because of no off-street parking. What I'm saying is there situations you get into that some of our famous 14-foot wide roads in North Chattanooga, and they don't have any off-street parking, so now you're setting up a hazard for the fire department, even though I'm sure they'd figure out a way to get around it. But I hadn't figured out how you do it, Chief, but that's what all I'm saying is help us make intelligent decisions by having that listed separately.
Yes, sir.
I think that might be it, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
for
it.
your question,
Thank you
sir.
very much.
Yes, sir. Councilwoman Coonrod.
Questions
The
from
list
the
of-
constituents, the
Oh,
questions
right.
that,
Mhm.
thank you. I didn't see anything in the presentation where we addressed all the questions from the constituents. Is there something you can send us that show the answers you provided our constituents? Because we get a lot of questions such as, can we eliminate the number that's in our area or the neighborhoods? The same things here. So what were your responses?
Well, I didn't have a response because we wanted to bring this back and present it to council so that we could come up with recommendations in a new ordinance, maybe answer some of these. So for instance, if the overlay should include the entire city, that's not something that we're considering at this point, and that was what we said in the meeting too. Currently, the overlay is the overlay. And so, and of course, District 9 was just expanded to include, to be included in the overlay. And I don't really have an answer for them at this point until we know what the ordinance will reflect.
Okay, do you know, since you all been doing your homework over the past 6 months about this issue, can we eliminate non-owner occupied short-term vacation rentals, or can we regulate the number of it that's in the neighborhood, so you all didn't get that far in the process?
I'm going to defer to Phil, and on that.
Sure. You can eliminate the ability of a property owner to do that. There's a question about whether that would be a taking by the government of their right to be able to do something that you've said that they could do. That is the issue, at least for the term of their license that they would have, that would be an issue.
Okay, but can we limit the number of short-term vacation rentals? Is that,
I guess you can, but you have to determine as to what date you are going to do that, which percentage of the community you're going to do that. The problems that I've seen in connection with this, neighborhood associations are sort of amorphous in the areas that you're dealing with. There's some question about, does one neighborhood association actually include other neighborhood associations' properties? How do you define the neighborhoods that you're limiting them within? And that needs to be considered by this body.
thank you. I'm really, the numbers that you presented, I'm glad that you all dug into where they're actually operating in the neighborhood associations area. because consistently for a whole year, I have heard that short-term vacation rentals are taking over the East Chattanooga area. Oh, they're taking over all the houses in the Glenwood area. And voila, I only have one operating in East Chattanooga. That's legally. Now, for me, it's very helpful. Thank you for equipping us with the information that our constituents can utilize to report houses that's operating illegally, so we can really find out who's operating in these neighborhoods, because if we don't have it on paper, like, who's to say if they're operating or not? We're just going by hearsay at this point. I get it that we want to be conscious and mindful of our volunteers that serve on our board when it comes to things, but I think as a council that we most definitely can look into the scope of work of what our boards are doing, right? And if it's not workable with what the boards that we already have created in place, then let's look at other options, such as setting up another board. We do it so greatly for other things there. And I'm with Councilman Mitchell and also Councilwoman Burrs, is that it's about the process, right? We often have folk such as yourself come and present and tell us what we're gonna do. But we need to start adhering to the process. That's what makes this work so great. So I agree. Hey, we wanna make sure we're including the voices of our volunteers, but we also need to have an understanding of what that means, what that looks like, and City Council has the authority to say, hey, this is gonna be put in the lap of this board. Why? It fits the scope of your work, right? But thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't want to get in this discussion today, but if you're, there's ways to limit numbers from a standpoint of you can have like a taxi cab medallions, number of liquor stores. There's ways to limit it, I think, without necessarily encroaching. I understand what Mr. Attorney, you're saying about if we've already given them the ability to do it, how can you take that away? That's a very legitimate, valid point. But if in the future this body would decide that we're going to limit it somewhere above that number, then I think we could probably find a legal way to do it. Of course, the state might come in and tell us, no, you can't.
Yes, sir.
But that's a question. And one thing I'll ask of the department, you all, again, did an excellent job of this. I personally do not want to see this on the agenda before we're ready for it to go on the agenda. That's just me personally. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a great job.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. One thing that I would like to say is that definitely I would like to see us do more to encourage people to get legal. In a sense, it seems like a lot of times we'll sit here and throw out different things and different scenarios that can happen, or different things that put us in a box as a city. And it makes people say, well, you know what? If I got to jump through all these loops, I just be illegal. What you really going to do to me? You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, we as a council also need to, I think, address the fact that what can we really do to these people that are illegal? Can we take their house? Can we take their car? Can we garnish their check? What can we do? You know? And so we're spending a lot of time trying to create different laws and ways to say, hey, you're illegal, shame on you, when there's really no repercussion to these laws that we're going to create. So I do and would like to see us, if we can work on creating things to make people say, you know what, I might as well get illegal. I might as well get legal. And if I get legal, then the city, then I think get a better bang for the work that we're putting in. So I would like to see a lot more of that. I think Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you. That, you made some great points. We gotta start holding them accountable to operating illegal. We do it for drug dealers. But City Attorney, and you made a great point too, Mitchell, and this just to add a little laughter to it. Because again, the state always says what we can't do, right? Or we say, well, we're gonna give you this and we're gonna limit. Well, guess what? They allow people to have medical marijuana, but they limited the amount that they can have, right? So, but my question to you is that, city attorney, is, can you or will you reach out to the state, whomever those people are, and say, and ask or have that conversation or open a dialogue to say, ask them, they need to understand our municipality, right? And we need, I understand they're the governing over us, but we need to be able to make them aware of the needs of the city of Chattanooga, right?
Yes.
So when we're talking about our area, we're not growing as rapidly as Nashville, and the things that may be working for that area or other municipalities, it may not work for the city of Chattanooga. So we may not need an overstocked supply of short-term vacation rentals.
Right.
Are you able to engage in those conversations?
We can and we will. I guess one thing that y'all need to be aware of, your ordinance that you have is not a zoning regulation that you have in connection with this area. Y'all started to go down that road at one point in time, and zoning powers are a little bit more limited by the state in that regard. Y'all are regulating these particular types of enterprises here as a business. And any type of short-term rental has to have a license that they receive from the city each year to allow them to do that on an annual basis. So if you're determining that there are more than you need within a particular area, you might be able to regulate that. But once again, you have to define what that area is that someone is dealing within, whether that be an entire council district, whether it be within a neighborhood association. Some determination would have to be done that would be enforceable by your people that go out into the field to make that determination. So those are things that you can look at in trying to do that. We can ask the state, and the state will tell us if we go too far, they will come in and develop regulations that say that you can't do what you're trying to do. But you have authority by ordinance to regulate businesses within your city, and that's what you've done to this point.
So have we ever done something or implemented an ordinance or a resolution, and the state actually came and said, we're gonna overpower, or we're gonna take over what you just decided to do?
Yes.
And that was with what?
Well, for one example, I've started to talk about adult establishments a minute ago. The state actually adopted our ordinance that we have on adult regulated businesses here in the city, but they did adopt a statewide law that said that you can't do anything any differently on that particular type of business enterprise than what they allowed. Yes, Uber and Lyft, yes.
Is that it, Councilwoman?
That's it.
All right, thank you for the work that you guys have done, and thank you, ECD. One other thing, I received this, to my knowledge, as still a learning session in trial and error to see the balance or a good place we can get to. So it's been a conversation. Mr. Mitchell, Councilman Mitchell said, before we see this on our agenda, they have echoed that several times. So I would definitely like to see more discussion. Councilwoman Coonrod spoke of some of the questions that were not answered and the things that were brought forward. Do we want to get rid of all owner-occupied? What do your constituents would like to hear? And I think at this time, you would still want to get information from us. Do we want to go to 150? You would still have to get information from us, and that conversation still needs to happen. So, Donna, Ms. Williams, are you still looking to receive emails from this body concerning these issues, and even concerning the part about, the LDO board and things of that nature?
Sure. Thank you very much, Richard Beam, for such a spectacular job. As you guys well know, we're not a legislative body.
Exactly.
We're operations. So we wanted to provide you with the information that had been provided to us so that you as a legislative body could discuss any number of these things and decide yourselves what you want to do. We didn't want you to have to start from scratch. So we, particularly Richard, Caleb, Dallas, and Charlie have put a lot of work into this, and thank you so much for the City Attorney's Office, to just cull through the information that we have, that we received from you, as well as what we received from folks who sent emails to scvr@chattanooga.gov, folks who've called the phone number, people who attended the 2 meetings. So this is really our attempt to let you know what we have heard and what's been gathered And then, of course, what happens is entirely up to you as a legislative body. So any of those things that are included or are not included, we are certainly happy to investigate anything further, but the decision is with you as a legislative body.
Thank you, and I appreciate, you giving us this information to give us a platform to live from. Councilwoman Burrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So from what several of my colleagues are saying, we want it taken off the agenda until we're ready to put it on the agenda?
It's not on the agenda.
Excuse me, it says there was a timeline. October,
That was recommended.
yeah.
That was a
It was
recommendation.
recommended by who?
Well, this body had asked us to present a new ordinance by October the 1st. And so we wanted to prepare a timeline for you all to let you all know that we were efforting to be consistent with what you had requested of us. So as far as we're concerned, it could be whatever date you all do or don't want it to have, want it to be. But we just put that in there so that you would know we were trying to honor your request.
Okay.
Okay.
So that doesn't, it means it's not on the agenda till we're ready to put it on?
Yes, ma'am.
And when are you suggesting having these discussions before it ever gets on the agenda?
Well, I think right now, today is one of those discussions, and that's what I was referring to Ms. Williams about, that I think maybe it's going to be other discussions to happen. It can happen next week, the week after next. Send her emails concerning this. I think we should reach out to our constituents. I know I have several areas in my community that don't want to see some of these things. I also asked the city attorney, what can we start putting together, because we know where we are, where we're going is the point. So this is where we are right now, and this is what's on the table. So this is, I would say, the foundation of where we're starting from. And I would ask this body to start letting me know, the city attorney, and of course, Ms. Williams, know where are we going from here and what would you like to see, so that we can start putting that together and preparing it to go on our agenda.
May I suggest, so that I can consider it fully, that we get copies of what our colleagues are interested in?
Of course. And is that,
Mr. Beelan sent everybody a copy of this presentation earlier today after your 1:30. I want to remind you that on July 23rd, I was here and I passed out the timeline. One of the things on the timeline was that from August 26th to September the 3rd, we would have one-on-one meetings with you. And it was my understanding that the request was made that I not do that, and that we have this discussion in a public forum. So when we saw it on your agenda for today at 3 o'clock, we assumed that this was the public forum. We are more than happy to get with anybody who's interested. Our challenge is, and I said this to you when I was at a previous 1:30 session, is you all are 9 people with varying districts and varying desires. And so you all agreed to send me information that you did or didn't want from each of your districts. I can't remember what Friday it was. I think it was by Friday, August 23rd, but don't hold me to that. And we received those. And to Councilman Coonrod's question, we don't have the answers to those. So the answers to those questions are whatever you guys want the answer to be.
Right.
So these are the recurring questions that were presented by your constituents. And our team is just here to help provide you whatever information you need to make a legislative decision. And we're happy to do whatever additional work you would like us to do to help with that.
Mr. Chair, may I follow up with that? At no time, honestly, at no time do I remember, if somebody told you we didn't want to have one-on-one meetings, I can't imagine. I believe you. I was waiting for my one-on-one meeting. I can't imagine who would speak for the entire council and say we didn't want one-on-one meetings. So I do want a one-on-one meeting because I think the work that you've done so far is really good. I hope, I would appreciate no one speaking for me and saying, I don't want one-on-one meetings. So thank you very much for bringing that up. Thank you.
Councilman Chip Henderson.
Mr. Chair, could I suggest maybe that we have, and I would like to see this at our 1:30 meeting, but that we circle back and discuss these changes in 2 weeks at our strategic planning.
Okay.
I think that'll give us enough time if any of us that would like to schedule a one-on-one with Ms. Williams, they can. I think there may be a little bit of confusion. It's I interpret what you've done today as handing the ball off to us, and now it's sort of in our court. It's up to us to answer the questions that's on this list and decide which amendments we want to make to this. Now, I'm not saying that certainly Ms. Williams can't give information based on the research that they've done, but I think you've basically done all that you can do in presenting today. Is that fair?
I think so, because, even amongst the 5 of us, we have different opinions about what the answers to those ought to be, but we're not a legislative body. So we want to be able to give that information to you because your districts are so diverse and varied. But if there's some factual information that you need to help you make a decision, and as a body or individually, our team is more than happy to provide that.
And I'm going to follow up a little bit on what Councilman Mitchell said a while ago. I think it's probably up to us to get in a room and come up with a consensus that we agree on each one of these in order to propose that legislation going forward.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right. Councilwoman Conrad.
Thank you. I just really wish we would have had access to it before we had the presentation, because I think that's what the discussion was at our 1:30 meeting when we said it. It's too late now, so move forward.
Too late for what? I'm sorry.
So now, because we were told we were going to get all this information that was gathered from the public meetings, we were going to get it first before we even had this hearing. So now we're past that part now. So do you all have the data to show how many people attended those public meetings?
We do. And let me just say that I apologize for any confusion, but the presentation we're making at 3 o'clock would have been the exact same presentation we made at 1:30.
Okay.
So I apologize if there's any confusion about that.
So either way, we didn't get this information, but I would like to see how many people actually attended those meetings, and if we could still extend it out to give the constituents more time to get their, voices heard, or to say whatever they need to say in regards to this. Of course, we could share it with, click on this link or email here, or to give us a call. Maybe if our council would like that to happen, to have some more open meetings, because I don't think we probably touched enough people in those meetings. I could be wrong, but I've had several calls and emails about asking if we can just put this off. They give them more time to come and voice their concerns about it. So now that we do have more time, that's great. Just really concerned about it. And really, you provided us with the information that we really knew already, because we got to go by what the state
We got the
saying.
information from the people who sent emails to STVR
Right.
at Chattanooga.gov, and the people who attended the sessions. And we had, you guys have had folks who've come to city council wanting to lobby you to let them into the districts. We have those folks' email addresses, and we've communicated with them via email. We have that data. And we are at your service. So whatever you want us to do, or however long you want to prolong it, or not prolong it, we're here at your service. So whatever you would like for us to do, we're happy to do it.
Okay.
Now, that's an open-ended question now. It can't be whatever we want you to do, because then that means we need to eliminate the owner occupant. Hey, that's
Well,
a
no,
different beast.
if that's what if you had a 5 out of 9 vote to do that, we would put it in the ordinance. You all would make it an ordinance, and we would, that's what we would enforce, whatever you come up with.
Hey, okay, are you, that's it, Councilwoman?
That's it.
All right, Ms. Donna Williams, thank you so much. So right now, this is what we are. Where are we going? We're trying to determine that. So in 2 weeks, September the 24th, strategic planning, we will have more discussion about this, and we will see where that takes us from. And I will just ask that you please forward any correspondence throughout the council to the other people in the body that suggestions that they may have. And I do ask that you definitely send this to everyone, make sure everyone has this. And on September the 24th, then we will definitely have more discussion about this in strategic planning. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
Ms.
And
Williams.
I just want to thank Richard and Caleb and
Richard.
Dallas and Charlie, because they've done a spectacular job on this. And if there's any information that you all need that has not already been provided, please let us know. We'd be happy to get it.
It definitely will. And guys, thank you so much for your continuous work. Really appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Seeing that we have no more questions, we are adjourned to 6 o'clock.
Yeah, send it to me over here. The feds regulate what we're supposed to be doing over there. And we've got a franchise requirement. You remember they gotta come in and see us about a franchise anytime they're gonna deal with. Where did Keith go? Hey, how's it going?
How's it going, Council? Good to see you, sir. Good to see you too. We should see you more often down there at our meetings.
Okay, okay, I will. I'll just make an appearance.
Okay, come on down.
Yeah.
I won't even ask you to get up and speak.
Oh, God, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Don't do that. Well, since you asked, I guess.
Yeah. All right, I'll see you later, Darren.
Nate, the computer's working great. Thank you. It's working good.
Chief.
Yes.
Chief. I know you work for us. I know you work for us. You know, people are opinion, right? You missed it, son. You missed it. Yeah, it was good. Yes. All right. I think I got it right. I got these calls today. Well, all we have to do is make sure that the code knows that they're not going to use it. Make sure it's like one part of the day. Okay, so we know it's going to be. No, he's telling her that you're moving it from next Tuesday, and you're gonna put it off till November. Well, it's a possibility you can do that. So remember setting this on the phone for our practice now. So we can run out. Update. Okay. We like, yeah, just tell the council that we won't do it next week. Y'all, what? It's something that, Yeah, she told me no comment. I told her that call. I told her that call. I'll talk to you later on. Seeing those slides, I know that clearly police officers
How you doing?
Doing well, how are you, sir? Pretty good, hanging in there.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
What's
Got
up?
the rocket on the agenda for this evening.
I pulled it up, so we should be okay. Yeah.
The amended version is on there. That scared me when I saw that. So that's why I had to go look for a minute.
Yeah, I knew what you was doing.
Went over
I
and
knew what
checked.
you was doing. You came back quick though.
Yeah, I got it
Yeah,
worked
so
out.
that was a good thing. So yeah, we should be okay.
Yep, no problems for this evening.
Okay, thank you. See you at 6. So she knows. Well, I did mention that, so we'll see what happens. I'll mention it. All right.